Yeah, it's okay to talk about that.
It's up to you. Do you want to talk about that?
Hello, guys, and this is our fifth episode, right?
Yes, fifth episode.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I wanted to, our conversation was revolving around StokerCon.
I couldn't join you, and I guess I have to confess this. I don't know. I didn't know anything about StokerCon, so I wasn't that interested in it. So that was part of why.
And it makes sense. Really, the StokerCon really was just an award show, kind of like the used to be just kind of like the Oscars were. It's an awarding for HWA, the Writers Association.
Is that what it is?
Horror Writers Association, and what it is, they give out awards at the end of the year, and that was it. And then now this year they try to make it into like an actual convention. It didn't but it was a good setting.
Oh yeah, Queen
it
Mary
was
sounds
a
like
great.
really
It
cool
was
place to
great.
have
It was
yeah.
great, and I did get to speak for a short time. I was hanging out with Dennis Edgerton. You may know him as a very famous horror writer back in the 1980s. He specialized in short stories, but he also did the novelizations for The Fog, Halloween 1 to 3, a bunch of other work in Hollywood. During the 80s, a lot of these HBO horror shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to speak with Gert Martin, and I was just saying, I don't know, man. I hope he doesn't pull a Robert Jordan on us, because I was surprised he's shorter than me.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
and he's he kind of looks like Wilson Fisk from Punisher, and I don't mean Punisher from the Daredevil show, but Punisher from the comic book.
Very intimidating.
Kind of the Kingpin. You know what I mean? He looks like the Kingpin from Wilson Fisk, because that's the Kingpin's real name.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
And like Spider-Man. You watched the Spider-Man show from the 90s?
Oh, sorry, I'm confused because you said he kind of looked like the Punisher, but then you also said.
Sorry. He kind of looks like Wilson Fisk from the Punisher, which is Wilson Fisk is the Kingpin.
Yeah,
right.
See, I know from Spider-Man.
And the thing is, he kind of has that same body type, and I'm just worried because I don't know, man. I hope he doesn't pull a Robert Jordan on us.
How old is he now?
He must be close to Dennis's age.
Okay, so how old is Dennis? Dennis is
70 something.
I was gonna say he's like
early
68.
70s.
Okay, early 70s. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Our medical technology is getting better, so we can hope that.
Oh yeah, I don't want anything to happen, because I know he has a designated writer in case like the story. Because I've been a fan since the late 90s, early 2000s, when people were reading Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. I just didn't want to give away that, because I don't want people to think I was some kind of sadist. Because I liked that story, and I remember when he lost the Hugo, and there was a bunch of the awards for like Hugo Nebula, that kind of thing, and he went up against, I believe it was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban or Sorcerer's Stone, I believe. I don't quite remember.
Sorry,
but he lost because it was the third book. It was his Storm of Swords was nominated.
Yeah.
And I just thought the whole horror and fantasy award was just garbage after that. Like I thought it was just the same as the Oscars, where they don't vote for the better, or the best. It's like a popularity contest essentially.
I guess,
because how could it lose to Harry Potter? That's the best book of the series in my opinion.
I don't want to be cynical, but at the same time, though, weren't the Academy Awards and weren't the Oscars always kind of political? And
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So I equated like the Hugo and Nebula and all that, Rondo, all that to. It was just like the Oscars.
Okay, I see. Fair enough. And I guess maybe my grander point is that isn't that the nature of all awards, though? I mean, in the end, we'd like to think that to a degree they are there's that merit on top of that, and I'm pretty sure the awards that are given out, of course, there's a merit to it too. I don't think anyone could write quite like J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, and what I mean by I got to speak to Gert Martin, it was just in passing, because Dennis was there with me, and they were just chatting because they knew each other from the 80s in passing, because they Gert Martin did a few compendium books with Bradbury's group, where they did like a short story, and it would be part of the compendium, and that's how they know him. And he became successful after that, essentially because he worked in Hollywood as a screenwriter.
Okay, this is also an off-topic question, but why do you say this is me being anal retentive? Why do you say Gert Martin as?
It's very simple, because because Grr, you should write faster.
I see.
Gert Martin, Grr. He's so infuriating. The same thing. It's just like he kills the characters that you care about. Grr.
I guess it's also easier to say than Gert Martin too. Gert Martin.
Yeah, because I remember when I read Storm of Swords, and that was in the early 2000s. I think 01, I believe.
Yeah.
I threw the book across the room.
Oh,
Like
really?
when certain, not the Red Wedding, but when spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. Everybody should have seen that by now. But when they had that scene where Ygritte was basically shot up when they were trying to, basically the wildlings were trying to break, the wall.
Mm.
Yeah, I threw the book across the room, and I was just like, "Fuck you," like, you know what I mean?
To be fair though, I mean like at least with J.R.R. Martin's work though, he firmly established like people like likable characters are gonna die from the first book. So
Right,
it's sort of
right.
it's sort of like expected.
Right. That's what I like about his universe is because it's our universe.
Fair.
Essentially, yeah, like his universe is like the world we live in. It's not like a Robert Jordan or Tolkien kind of.
So you're saying that it's not a saccharine, right? So it's more engaging because yeah, that's as much as we'd like to think the good guy wins, he prevails. Good guy usually gets his head chopped off trying to do the right.
Try to do the right thing. Yeah.
Especially when you're played by Sean Bean. That's
Oh yeah. Regardless, it's like for any generation that's seeing this video, if you're watching a movie with Sean Bean, you gotta best beware because most likely he's gonna betray you. But don't worry because in the end he most likely will get killed.
I learned a fun fact about Sean Bean in Lord of the Rings. I heard that this is from Looper, so I don't know if it's true or not, but I watched it on a top 10 Looper video, and they were saying that he was afraid of flying. So apparently, like for him to get to the set, they'd drop him off at the closest location possible, and the dude would hike dressed up as Boromir all the way up to the set.
What?
Yeah, if it's true, that's pretty.
How the hell
cool.
did they get to shoot the They had the Arecibo scene in Goldeneye. That's pretty high
Oh,
up.
that's right. Yeah.
Because Bradbury had the same problem.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he couldn't fly. Like so, he had to take like like a boat or drive everywhere.
So usually, if he took a trip, it's a long trip.
And that's the thing that's whack about it because the thing is, he came from the era where we still had ocean liners, where like Queen Mary. We still have that today, but it's not like the same as from like the 50s.
Yeah.
Well, before like commercial planes took over, basically. And the thing is, on top of that, he had to basically, he's beholden to people's good graces because he doesn't drive. So someone had to drive him everywhere. And his reasoning was like he's a really weird guy because he's a great guy, but what I mean is he was afraid of killing somebody. He was so fixated with the idea of like I'm responsible for another human life. I don't want to kill anyone. Hence, I'm not going to drive. But then that's kind of passing your responsibility to someone. If someone still has to drive you.
Yeah, I guess when you put
You know
it that
what I
way,
mean?
yeah, I agree with you. That's tricky, but at the same time, though,
I'm not criticizing Ray Bradbury. I'm just telling you the truth because we know him. So.
Well, I could see that, and I could see and I could understand his apprehension to it as well. At a certain point, it's like there are the jobs that you want to take. It's like I'd never take a job in a space shuttle. Or never drive a space shuttle at this point because I would kill people trying to drive a space shuttle. And to a degree, driving is much more simpler, obviously, but it probably stems from that same sort of mentality. So yeah, I get it. But boy, that's got to be that has to be kind of tricky though, because even like looking at it from like your standpoint, if you kind of live that way. That the convenience of driving that actually gives you a lot of access and a lot of independence.
It does, but he never learned how to drive, and that's the reason why. I can quote that because that's what he told us.
Yeah.
So he just didn't want to be responsible for hurting or killing anybody. So
at the same time, though, I wonder, and to a degree, like that's a mentality we should not that we shouldn't drive, of course, but maybe we just need to look at it as we're going behind a vehicle that's. How many
3,000 is like a small car.
Yeah, like over 3,000 pounds, at the very least.
And traveling at like 70 miles an hour.
Right. So some people don't consider that, as they're like, eating food, texting, and like what's it called?
And we don't live in some kind of like Kardashev level 2 universe where everything's automated and you could just hop on it and be 100% sure that you'll never kill anyone. It's not some kind of assembly line that take you from like Los Angeles to like the UK or something. Right. Yeah.
Not yet, at least. But,
not yet, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, but and I guess I wonder.
It's not a Star Wars universe, is what I'm saying. Like, what's that city in Star Wars where all the cars are flying? You know what I mean?
Coruscant. Yeah.
Coruscant, right?
Coruscant. I wonder if we can segue into the conference because hypothetically, one of the biggest themes of the conference was the idea of responsible use, and it seemed like persistently that was an idea that they were trying to convey. Did that work, or is that?
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I just a little thing. It's like I've been really busy 2 weeks for me and him.
Yeah.
But
much more for Julius actually.
2 weeks ago, I said this. I am one of those rare people that have been to I call it Conquest Basic, which is you should be able to do this in 1 year, and it's like an awesome year for you. You start with San Diego Comic Fest. You go to WonderCon. After going to WonderCon, you would go to Coachella. After Coachella, you go to Burning Man. And after Burning Man, you go to LostCon. And I consider that Conquest Basic, which is, kind of like events or conferences, so it's like the big trifecta of media, comic books,
It's like if you were going to go to Disneyland, they're
hippies.
the main rides that you just need to go on. Otherwise, you haven't really gone to Disneyland.
Right. I've been able to do all of those. I just have not been able to do them all in 1 year. It's a lot of money.
Oh, so you attempted it, but you couldn't quite.
I couldn't quite. I've been to all of them multiple times.
Yeah.
I just haven't been. I missed like one. So I guess if I did all of them, that would be like Conquest Ultimate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you're not bad though. I mean, to go to most of them except for one.
Except for one, yeah. So this year, I said this, I would skip all of them if the Psychedelic Science Conference occurred basically once a year. I would go, if I had to choose between going to all of them or just having to choose to go to the Psychedelic Science Conference that 1 year, one time, I'd choose that. And the only problem is it happens like the Olympics. It happens every 4 years. So we both went.
Yes.
We did not go to the whole 6-day event. That was kind of hard to do.
We stayed for most of the main conference event, though. The days that occurred between April the 22nd to April the 24th, I believe.
Yeah, so Friday to Sunday.
Yeah.
So most of Friday we were there. We just skipped maybe the first 2 hours or something.
Julius did the driving, so we basically jammed our way forward.
Yeah, jammed our way forward to it's just not the scenic route of California, because that's really the boring route if you take the 5 all the way from Southern California to
unfortunately,
the Bay Area.
I don't know. I think it's beautiful. It's just the longer route too.
That's the problem. Yeah. It's not the scenic route. I mean, it's the longer, but it's the one that takes the shortest amount of time, even though technically you drive more miles. It's weird. Yeah, it's really odd. But we had a great. I mean, I did. There's a lot of things there's a lot of stuff that really opened my eyes. The whole idea of epigenetics, and I haven't really read up on it, and it seems it's a relatively new field of biology.
Right.
And I'm still not completely sold, because there's certain space for it, for a little bit of quackery or new age thinking, I suppose. But the way it was presented to us was very compelling.
Yeah, it was cool the way it was. At least from the that particular talk that we saw, we'll talk about it.
He'll talk about Dr. Joe Tarfur as a medical doctor.
Yeah.
But the one that really got my, won't say got my goat, but really got my attention was the idea of weight-based dosing of psychedelics, particularly psilocybin, versus just a straight flat dosing, meaning giving the same amount to everyone. And the studies that were done for that in Maryland and Johns Hopkins, it really blew my mind apart how that flat dosing seems to work better. Because the thing is, that would seem to be counterintuitive, because you'd think that the heavier the person is, maybe that you should give him more, based on his weight, essentially, more of the substance, more of psilocybin. But in my experience, it actually validated my anecdotal experience, where we were able to administer to somebody what Terence McKenna would say would be a heroic dose. It wasn't even a heroic dose, which is 5 dried grams of psilocybin, or 5 grams of psilocybin, I suppose, depending on what source you want to read, in Airwid or DMT Nexus or whatnot. But the big guys that we gave, not even 5 grams, but somewhere close to it, around 4 something on the high 3s, they didn't have a good experience. They were what you would call lightweights, like they had a bad trip. And to me that never made any sense because you would think that you should be able to give a person more, but then this recent studies that I went to, they're saying like they have more 2A receptors, and perhaps that's the reason why the people that weigh more need less, which is it was very eye opening.
It was like I think it was they're speculating that they had a particular type of serotonin reuptake or a serotonin receptor S2A.
S2A because they got basically it would kind of make sense because their weight they would have bigger weight mass in their brain, right? Because they're a bigger person, and so they would have more of these receptors. And it was just very eye-opening because it did back up what I experienced personally. Because I had a girlfriend before, and I would say that she would take like a heroic dose, like something that I would not be able to take. Like we're talking about somewhere between like 7 grams of psilocybin, something outrageous, something and she would be fine. Like she'd be okay.
Yeah, I just need to emphasize 7. Seriously? 7?
Yeah. So I mean, how big is that? Like to take into consideration, that is like more than like a full Ziploc. Because 5 grams would be like a full Ziploc bag of like dried mushrooms, and then add 2 more grams to that. And then she would be okay. Like she would be like, well then whatever. Like she'd have maybe some gastro issues, like throwing up, going to the restroom kind of thing. But then like it would take her somewhere, some place where it's just actual like full-bodied hallucination, like in real time, where you go somewhere else, but she's okay. And some people that you would give nowhere near that dose that are like weigh a lot, in my experience, like they would have a full, almost like a psychotic breakdown, like what Dennis McKenna experienced in La Chirera. Mm-hmm. And it kind of validates what we've experienced, like anecdotally at least. So I really loved the conference. I learned so many things. And I got to speak to a lot of the key people of the old neo-psychedelic movement. Kathleen Harrison, a very famous ethnobotanist. You might know her as Terence McKenna's ex-wife. And I got to speak with Dennis McKenna for a short time. So a couple of the key people. I haven't been able to give full-on interviews on Skype yet for a lot of academia because they're still kind of winding down. Because it was a hectic, basically, week and a half for them. So they're coming, and a lot of them are not from like 3,000 miles away or more. Some of them are from Europe.
Okay, yeah.
So I just want to, like kind of approach them like later on when it's kind of winding down, maybe like give it like another week, and then that's when I could interview some of them in Skype.
That sounds excellent. And I'm guessing did you get any responses back?
I did. I got a couple of, there's a couple people that I spoke to at poster sessions. They didn't do the actual presentation, but they had a presentation on the posters. So it's actual like graduate students or taking their MD or their postdoc. I mean, a pre-PhD.
Right, yeah.
And several of them responded, and then like they gave me their actual paper and archive, and I went over it, and I said like, yeah, you know what, I need more time because I need more time to unwind too, because I had a lot of photos over the last 2 weeks that I need to process and videos, not just for the Psychedelic Science Conference, but for the other thing I went to. But go ahead with you. Tell me about your experience in PS7 2017.
Oh, for me, it was interesting because I've never really been to a conference like that before. It was much more scientific based, and that's what I was expecting. One of the things I will say though is that I wasn't quite ready for it, mainly from the scientific standpoint. My biology and my neuropsychology is absolutely a mess, and I also don't know anything about the anthropological side of it as well as the botany side of it. So it was like a giant rush of information. It was me trying to process all of it. With that being said, though, of the bits of information that I could glean, it was absolutely fascinating. Once again, both of us saw Dr. Tapper. Was he a botanist or
his background? No, he's a medical doctor. His background is he went to UCLA to finish his med school. He also went to UCSD. He, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, had a friend. He's also a doctor of Iranian extraction. He's originally from Colombia. His family's from Colombia. Yeah. So that's why he knows about the indigenous plant medicines.
Yeah, but incidentally, though, he also happens to be like a shaman as well, right? And
what happened was his first experience was with his friend of Iranian extraction. Yeah. And basically after like his second or third session, he decided that he wanted to undergo the traditional shaman apprenticeship, which typically in the Amazon lasts anywhere between a year to 2 years.
Yeah.
So depending on what tribe that
you go for it. Like, yeah. I wonder. Incidentally, this also segue into a movie that we watched at the conference, which was really interesting as well, because I have some questions about that. One thing about his Joe Taffer's talk was that he tried to combine that aspect of the shamanistic rituals and like his experiences using ayahuasca and how he actually interacts with, I guess, the patients. Is that the proper term in that case? So the patients that he deals with, and how he uses ayahuasca to help them as well.
He tries to blend basically a very hard science Western medicine approach, because that is his background. He is a practicing medical doctor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he, locally, here. And then he mixes that with the knowledge that he gleaned from the plant medicines through his apprenticeship. So much talking about like combining mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, which is the biggest thing for him, was like that emotional health.
He has the concept of the emotional body.
Yes.
Yeah, then that's I guess from his idea, or like from what I understand is his idea. He essentially looks at the systems of the physical body and how the emotion actually ties into it. So we have the parasympathetic nervous system, and like when a person gets nervous or they're stressed, ultimately this will lead to some physical results, or they'll lead to some, I forgot the proper term for it. But essentially, though, he tries to treat it from that emotional level in order to treat the symptoms. So if you have a migraine, there are actually parts of the body that are being affected either through the parasympathetic nervous system or the limbic brain or the autonomic nervous system. And then he tries to treat it from that emotional standpoint, and then therefore it'll fix all those parts, and then therefore the person that ultimately gets better, the migraine gets removed, and he approaches it from that angle.
The simplest way that I could describe it is really a more holistic how the West approached health back in the days of the height of alchemy, which was in the medieval period, because now it all got separated. Like, we talk about the concept of fire, air, water, and earth. The water is basically the chemistry part, anything that has to do with like liquids, meaning like, a hormone, chemical, the glands, the lymph nodes kind of thing. And basically like that, the idea of fire, water, earth, and wind, they all got separated when the Vatican basically had a break with alchemy, or what the church had, because there was that wisdom tradition, which Isaac Newton and all them people, during that period were a big part of, because they were all practicing alchemists essentially, and they basically that morphed into what we now know as modern day chemistry, and they basically took a break from a more spiritual religious practice. And what Tarfor essentially is doing is very similar to that, in a sense, is like melding the hard science with that concept. It's really a shamanic concept that's not a monopoly in the Amazon. That's basically how shamans approach health in all the parts of the world, whether that be in Mongolia, the Southeast Asia, and the Philippines, Indonesia, or in the Middle East, or even in the tundras in Siberia. They think about that idea of the emotional body as a big component of your general overall health, that not here in the material realm, that it can affect, because basically it would manifest into a symptom, whether that be cancer or something stress induced.
And to a degree, it sounds very it sounds almost like psychological or psychiatric as well from that degree. And I guess that's why I find it really fascinating. It's that idea that a person with a sound mind will ultimately have a sound body. And
that's the very idea in the shamanistic concept, where you can never separate them, because here in the West we try to separate like mind and body. There's the shamanistic idea all throughout the world is there's no such thing, because you cannot separate them. Like if you get rid of one, the other will die.
Right.
So
just the way that he described it was really cool. Like, for example, like do you want to explain the idea of like how he actually treats patients, because that was the neatest thing. Like his particular visions, and that's the thing I also learned too. Is that I didn't realize that the shamans also took ayahuasca when a person was taking ayahuasca.
Yes, they do. The only thing I would say, because I don't want to steal his thunder, is please read the book Fellowship of the River by Joe Tarfor.
Okay,
but I'm just gonna say that because it's just too. I don't feel like I'm qualified to go over the entire thing, but I have had a very similar experience under ayahuasca. This is a common theme, not a common theme, but it does happen with people that are under the influence of dimethyltryptamine, where actually you see your DNA, which I know it just like it sounds bullshit to you guys, like because you've never experienced it. But I'm telling you that that is an experience that some people report, where it's almost like you could see your deoxyribose, like the actual spiral, and then you look at it's just go to the Amazon and take ayahuasca or smoke DMT. You know what I mean? if you do it enough, maybe you'll see it.
What do we know about epigenetics? Because he stressed an important part of that, and as I was reading like little bits and pieces of it, I guess it's starting to make a bit of sense.
I can kind of explain it because this really came about with the study of twins. Because what they don't understand is like, okay, when you're a twin, you have the exact same DNA as that person.
I guess long story short is that epigenetics is simply the expression of certain genes without actually change of the genetic code itself.
Well, because epi means above the gene,
right.
So it's above the gene. Literally means that. So it came from the study of twins and the idea that like how come like one would develop cancer and the other one would not? That doesn't make any sense because the fact that they have the exact same genetic code. And then so there must be some kind of trigger. The idea is that there might be some kind of trigger in the environment that causes one person to be way more susceptible. Like one will develop cancer and then they might die several decades before the other twin, even the other twin would never develop cancer.
Right, and hypothetically, cancer has a pretty big genetic component in twin.
And then so that's where really that came about. That study of that. And the idea that, like certain segments of the U.S. population, for example, like people that live in the inner cities, meaning people of minority extraction, typically there's been decades-long studies that this have like a much higher cancer rate than meaning their genetic counterparts, meaning their country of origin, than compared to the one that lives here. So like so from over there, like they're fine, and then here they might have 3, 4, 5, 7 times more likelihood of cancer. Why is that? So it's like it doesn't make sense in a genetic standpoint that one would be. So the only explanation would be environmental factors such as stress, diet, interaction with people, support structure, which again it goes back to stress.
Yeah.
So that's really where that science originated, because of the study of that, because they realized like, that's higher standard of deviation. Why would that be the case?
I guess it's making that implication that ultimately, we have genes and they'll sometimes express some phenotypes, but the thing is they apparently the way that they're expressed can be changed, which is strange. And I guess they've known about it for a while, but it's just that now it's making a lot of headway.
It's making a lot of headway in biology,
recently.
Yeah, definitely. So it's just one of those things that it's a topic that that's very fascinating for me. Especially his talk was like one of the highlights of the entire conference for me. But the one I thoroughly enjoyed were outside of, because Psychedelic Science Conference really is a science conference.
Right.
That's really what it is. Like a lot of people was just like, oh, like when you hear maybe 10 years ago or whatnot, when you say that to your coworkers, tell the people that you're with, and say where you're going, they think, oh wow, you're gonna get high on LSD there. Like, no, that wasn't my reaction, because the thing is, it really is a science conference. But what was enjoyable about it was the fact that there were several parts of the conference center that had different other things, other speakers.
Right.
So meaning like authors, and then they had like a marketplace, and then they had one dedicated. There was one for a couple of psychiatrists had like their own kind of panels on small rooms. So there were really a lot of places to do in the hotel, because basically at any given time there were 8 places where things were going on.
Yeah.
So you could choose like where you want to go. You customize your experience.
Well, yeah, and I guess that's the thing that has to be stressed too, that there was a wide variety of topics and there was a wide variety of expertises built around that. As it turns out, the particular one that we both seem to have really enjoyed, it just happened to be that more for me at least, I liked it because I could understand it better. that made it more easy. But a lot of them though, yeah, like they were a lot of them were just merely presenting the research that they had done within the last 4 years of presenting it, and a lot of it's new and cutting edge research built around psychedelics. And as you were mentioning the research from Alex Garcia Ramirez before, like that was the one built around the body.
He was one of the guys that agreed to be interviewed.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. He was he was the research built around the body weight and what's called. Funnily enough, I think that's also how they section it off. Everyone on that East Wing seemed to be built around I guess the Berkeley Foundation's like research on MDMA
and it is affiliated because MAPS
Yeah.
really is an MDMA based research center.
Yeah.
They really concentrate on basically street name would be ecstasy.
Yeah. Oh, he was in his case though he was psilocybin.
Psilocybin.
Yeah.
Psilocybin cubensis.
Yeah.
To me, one of them. Well, there were so many, but the other two highlights. Can I go over and let you finish the two highlights of the conference for me outside of what we've discussed? One was I call it like a mad science experiment of psilocybin, which is like how the hell did they allow this to get approved by the FDA and all that? Because it's insane. Like they had basically there's a branch of chemistry called pharmacokinetics, which is just a fancy way of saying that like studying
how the drugs interact with the body.
Yes, it's experiential effect of chemistry in the body.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And basically, like they did the most insane study ever, where they gave them like silo pills. So there's a completely controlled environment where it was increasing dosages. So they had like 3 tests. The first test essentially started you off at 5 grams, almost 5 grams, and in the end, it's basically an equivalent of 10 grams of dried mushrooms. So it's basically double what Terence McKenna says heroic dose. It's double that, and I don't know if that's ethical, man. But let's just say that if there was a study that was involved in that in UCI, I would gladly volunteer. But Jesus Christ, like I mean, like that's an insane dose, like for a medical trial. I mean, not a medical trial, but an actual like study. Like wow, like.
How long ago was that study?
This is pretty recent. It's within the last 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they had a panel where basically the only thing they did is they interviewed like 4 people that participated in the actual, and they all became friends.
Fair enough.
And then it was so that's one, which is like to me, I can hyperlink it in the video. That's one, and to me the other one was the thing that I wanted to talk about was our experience with this binaural LED machine.
Oh, okay, can we save that one for later?
Oh,
that one's just weird.
Okay. Yeah, but to me, those were the highlights of the conference for me, which is just like to me, it was very eye opening for someone that has experience going to the tank for basically like more than a decade now. So since the early 2000s, like I've had experience like going to sense and altering my consciousness without taking anything.
Right.
Just like going to basically it's a dark room. The water's the same temperature as your body. You're floating. Your eyes covered, so you don't really hear anything. After a while, the smell of the Epsom salts kind of disappears, and you don't see anything. And then your mind fills the rest in, because you're cut off from all outside stimuli. But from someone that has experience with that, and then going under that thing and having experience with psychedelics, it was very interesting. So we'll save that for later. But
okay.
And so your turn now.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, like I guess the other highlights that I had for that conference was Torsten Passy, and he basically just did a quick overview on the history of research in MDMA, and I thought it was very it was succinct. There are a lot of interesting facts. Like for example, I didn't know that MDMA was just derivative of MDME, so it was a military derived substance. Which is funny because we associate MDMA with ecstasy. So
right.
It's like how did that go about? Incidentally, I want to make a criticism of the conference. It seemed like the one common theme with every talk that we had was that they all ran out of time. Because sometimes they had only like 30 minutes to talk.
It's too short.
Yeah, it's actually
too short. Yeah, they make it longer.
Yeah, I mean, like you could tell because like they're rushing through it, and then sometimes they'll make a joke about how it's like, oh, we're in. Okay, I'm just gonna cut off this part and this part. It's like, no, what's going on?
I know it's yeah. We're gonna make a criticism because you're supposed to fill out a survey in the end.
Oh, was I?
Yeah. You just go to the website and fill out the survey because it should be in your email.
Oh, okay.
And what I put was like, F y'all, why does this happen only once every 4 years? But that's really the thing that it's like a big criticism of most people.
Yeah,
go ahead.
And like it happened here with Dr. Passey's talk as well. He just ran out of time, and I guess the problem with history is that there's a lot of it. There's a lot of aspects to focus on it. So yeah, I mean, inevitably he couldn't get all of it in, but he legitimately just had to cut it short because he only had I think that was a 30-minute talk. He only had 30 minutes to talk through that one. But yeah, like one fun fact I learned was that before they were before when women were in labor, they gave patients scopolamine and morphine. You know, I'm familiar with obviously morphine and scopolamine, and if you guys haven't heard of scopolamine, it's that like there's a Vice documentary on how like you can use it to, if you give a person enough of it, somebody will act. It's like the mind control drug they call it. So you can give them a certain dose, and they'll wake up next morning with all their stuff gone, and like they'll find out that the people who stole their stuff, they gave them permission to enter it and take their things. It's that powerful, apparently.
Wow.
And as a fun fact, scopolamine is used as in patches for seasickness. It's an anti-nausea. It's an anti-nausea drug. So you know, before like apparently the reason why they even decided to look into that avenue was that they were giving it to you know, women who were in labor, and supposedly they were just telling people all sorts of things that they just shouldn't be telling them. So they were like, huh, that's weird. Like they were talking about how like one lady would say, oh yeah, the safe is there, that like in this location, and they're like, you know, the husband's like, what are you talking about? What's going on? But that's fast. That was a fascinating little factoid to me though. But just the idea that originally it was you know, it had a legitimate military application, and then they found out that it wasn't, it made them way too incoherent for it to be useful, and also very friendly as MDMA does. So you know, they that's why they nixed it. But then eventually it just got into the hands of pharmacists who thought it was neat, and then from there they just dropped it on the streets. Obviously there's more to it, but I'm giving you a very 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 simplified version of the history of it. But
yeah, it got into the hands of Dr. Sasha with Roach Tikal back in like the early 90s, late 80s, which is the book Tryptamines I Know and have taken and loved. Yeah.
Well, one fascinating thing too that I learned from that talk was that it was actually supposed to be a Schedule III drug, but then the DEA themselves overruled it in spite of the fact that it was a DEA judge that ruled it as a Schedule III drug. So that, you know, that was kind of weird too. And he couldn't. I think he wanted to go more into it, but he ran out of time.
Yeah. Once you do the research on the history of psychedelic use, you realize it's like why it's banned. It's because there's a lot of fuckery afoot, you know, when it comes to the government and them not wanting people to have access to it. So.
Yeah, I can't help but to think that was also one of the running themes of this conference as well. They were trying to present themselves, and that's why the scientific angle was so important to them. They were trying their darn hardest to present this idea that there is medical benefits to it, and it seems like there is, at the very least from the psychological point of view. And a few of the talks that I went to, they talked about how they're used in conjunction with psychotherapy, or they're used in conjunction with some sort of counseling. In which case, it actually ties it back to the idea of shamanism and ayahuasca usage as well, because that's kind of how it works.
Yeah. So really, there's a direct corollary with how like psychotherapy is now with actually like shamanic practices. Like essentially, they're the same. Like it's like the same purpose. Even the protocols seem to be so similar.
Really? Which ones do you mean?
Well, essentially, like when you take ayahuasca traditionally as a medicine. Although, like, as I told you before, like, you know, the usage has changed over the years, and it's like an ever-evolving kind of thing. Because historically, it was used in Amstel to be like, like, you know, when should I plant the crops this year, that kind of thing. Right. Where did I lose my keys? Like, you know, and then you take, that's something you take over the weekend kind of thing, which is morphed into more treating Westerners that have health or psychological issues or trauma kind of. But the shaman has the same protocol in the sense that after taking whatever the prescribed medication is, there's a counseling portion where they actually go over the integration of your experience, because they ask you, oh, okay, what happened in your trip, right? And you tell them, and then they basically like interpret. It's kind of like the old way of like interpreting dreams, psychoanalysis essentially. Psychoanalysis. And then classic psychoanalysis, and then they talk about, this happened to you when you were a young boy or a young girl, and they're like, how do you know that? Like, you know, it was shown to me in the vision last night, you know, and they go over it, and then how you integrate that now with what you are as a person now, like the current version of you, and then how you move on from this past trauma kind of deal. So really, there's a direct corollary. It's almost like the way that psychiatry or psychotherapy is now is basically just a reimagining of the old shamanistic. Because, you know, in shamans, in the old sense, is both like healer doctor and kind of like religious leader.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
it does seem like, I guess, we have those ideas fractionated. Is that a term, fractionated? Yeah, they're just like they're split apart at this point, because it does sound like the shaman has all those aspects. While, you know, if we're looking for spiritual advice, we go to the priest. If we're looking for psychological counseling or general counseling, we go to our friends, or we go to a psychologist. Usually it's just your friends and whatnot. Fair enough. And you know, if you're sick, you go to the doctor. And, you know, while the shaman kind of like encompasses all those aspects, I wonder if at the very least, from the psychological standpoint, that's kind of the movement they're trying to head in now. I don't think they're going to go full all in with the psychedelics, but at the very least, though, it couldn't hurt to have another method of or modality of treatment. Right. You know.
I'm just complete agreement with you. So.
Which, and it leads. This is great because it leads into the movie that we watched, The Last Shaman, which kind of talks about that very idea about it. The Last Shaman was a was a movie that was shown on like the Saturday night, I believe, and the basic story is that there's a young man who's thoroughly depressed, and it seems like he's tried everything, I think including suicide. I don't know if he went that far, but
he did. He tried to commit suicide.
Did he try? I forgot. I forgot. How did he do it? I forget how.
He tried to go to the train tracks.
Oh, I thought for some reason I thought he was just it was like contemplation of suicide, but not the actual attempt to jump into the train tracks. In any case, though, yeah, he goes into the he goes to South America, and then basically then at that point it's about him looking through a series of shamans until he finds a shaman that works. So I guess it's kind of like he's shopping around, but like part of the interesting thing is that it looks at I guess what they said, the darker side of shamanism and the darker side of ayahuasca.
And I like that because it was really honest about it. Yeah,
because we have this very mystical aspect about, oh yeah, he's a shaman, so he knows what he's doing. You know, he's got all the magic. He has all this knowledge, and the movie did a pretty good job at conveying this idea that there are people who are in it for the money. There are people who are just outright liars, and then there are people who kind of mean well, but they're not very good at it. So
yeah, I mean, it's just like kind of like the common thing here, where some people that have like psychosomatic issues, like they go to doctor, I feel better, not knowing that, you know, doctors are just people like you and I. Like, you know what I mean? Some of them are, take this drug because this was advised to me by like a drug sales know, kind of thing, and they're trying to make their quota essentially, even though, you know, it's the same thing. Like, you know, people are people, and, you know, there's a lot of fuckery afoot when you're dealing with simians, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, we saw that movie together. What did you think of the movie overall?
I really like that first part where they talked about the dark side, because it's very honest about ayahuasca tourism, in particular in Peru. It's becoming a problem in Colombia and Ecuador as well. But in Peru, particularly in Iquitos, it is a big problem, like where people are being taken advantage of, money basically being taken from them, and then being sold a false bill of goods, not even been taking ayahuasca, essentially.
Obviously, there's no oversight, right?
There's none, and there has to be. But the thing is, I told you it should be pretty simple because we have all these tools now, like Arrowhead, like DMT Nexus, like Amber Lyon's website, Reset Me. I mean, it goes over that. So there's some form of protection now. You just got to do your own research. You got to be diligent. You don't jump off a plane without studying. Like, I'm just going to jump out of the plane today. Like, you know, like, I'm just going to bungee jump today without testing the tensile strength of the rope that
To be fair, when you're desperate in a certain state of mind, I could understand a person like jumping to like the wrong answer as soon as possible because they're suffering. On the other hand, if you're a tourist and you're doing it for kicks, then well.
Yeah, if you're a tourist, exactly.
But
I really enjoyed the first part of the movie, but it wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't a documentary really. Like it was really more of James's story as opposed to. I really liked that first part, but it didn't go over. That ending to me left a little bit to be desired, in a sense. They should have gone over more of like what happened to the shaman, and that kind of thing, and a little bit of follow up, because he did help. He did save your life. I mean, you kind of owe it to him.
How much of this movie do you want to spoil? we can spoil the entire thing. I don't mind, but someone might want to watch it.
Yeah, but I enjoyed that first part where you talk about the negative, because I believe in that. I believe in the negative aspects of ayahuasca, and I also believe in the negative aspects of taking DMT, and The idea of I don't want to say the idea of bad trips. There's only difficult trips because some of the worst travels that I have gone to, months or even years later, I realized like, oh, that was shown for me for a reason, and it actually helped improve my persona of being like nicer to somebody or something like that, something involving that. But the idea of it, sorry, the actual administrating the medicine, yes.
I was just gonna say that idea, like when you were talking about there are no bad trips, but there are difficult trips. It reminds me of what that other doctor was saying, the one who did the body weight studies. He was talking about how ultimately there were trips like that were more difficult, but he said that most of the time there were a few of them that were of course outliers, but most of them were positive, right? Yeah, he was saying that a lot of them were ultimately positive, or at the very least, the participants in those studies mentioned that it was significant or important or impactful in their life when they rated it amongst other impactful parts of their lives.
And I have to offer a disclaimer because I don't consider psychedelics to be for everyone, and that it would always be positive, because I'm only 1 degree of separation from somebody who took it and within 2 years later committed suicide because he was too young, I believe, when he took it, and he did not have. First off, here in the West, we don't have ancient shamanic traditions that know how to deal with these ancient, basically sage mystic kind of experience or afterlife experiences. And he committed suicide 2 years after that because he could not deal with it. Like he just thought that reality was more real than this one.
Did he have anyone guiding him?
No.
See, and that's
the thing. He just smoked it, and I knew his girlfriend because I basically did a favor for her before as a blue collar worker, like servicing her house. And that's how I end up knowing her. And then she relayed the story to me about. I was like, wow,
that's terrible. But at the same time, though, I guess like anything, right? You shouldn't you shouldn't jump off a plane without knowing the details of that very action.
Well, when I said the rules is the same for the Ouija thing, I kind of broke some of them. Like not break, but let me explain. Like the whole idea of never do it alone. Never do it in your house. Always say goodbye to whoever you meet. So that's the rules of playing the Ouija board, which I've never played. But to me, it should be the same when you go to that other place when you take a heroic dose.
Yeah.
Which for ayahuasca always seems like it's a heroic dose, because when the shamans administer you typically go somewhere else. And psilocybin, it depends on the dosages, because you could microdose and be like the most awesome like basketball player ever or whatever, like you see in Matrix time.
Nice.
That's microdosing. You take a little bit more of that, and you no longer want to fight. You want to do something else, and you take the heroic dose, and that's when you have the full blown psychedelic experience. I have broken the first rule in the sense that don't do it in your house. I didn't do it in my house, but I did it in someone else's home. So that's kind of fibbing with the rule. The second rule is never do it alone. I haven't done it, meaning like you should always have like a shaman or at least a trip sitter, a watcher. Sitter, yeah. I have never done it alone, but I have wandered off. Meaning like I took it, I had somebody there, but I just went out to the forest kind of thing. Like I'm just like, like, I'm like, that's kind of dumb, like, But the third rule, I always follow that. The whole, never, always say goodbye to whoever you meet. Like, and whether you believe in the idea of bad spirits or that's the actual creation of your own mind, it doesn't matter. To you, that's reality. If that's just demons that you invented yourself in your head, it doesn't matter, because those things will haunt you if you don't say goodbye to them.
It sounds like the person in your story didn't properly say goodbye if we were going by those.
Well, he didn't follow any of those. Like, so that's the thing. I mean, like
that sounds like the most important rule, though, and he certainly didn't.
Because at least when spoiler alert, for liability's purposes. During the Psychedelic Science Conference, I partook in the medicine, the sacred tea. And I had all of those rules present. I didn't do it in my house. I didn't do it alone. And, always say goodbye to who I met. So, just one of those things, man. There are rules for a reason. Like, it's kind of like light speed travels at this certain speed. Like, and it has all these benefits, for the universe anyway.
And it does seem like they're trying to, emphasize that part of the I guess not the ceremony, but I guess the desire and the need to at least have a if not from the scientific standpoint, a controlled situation so that they can monitor what's happening. And on the flip side too, I imagine that these traditions and these ceremonies are important because it's a part of the healing practice anyways. It's sort of that to put yourself in the mindset, but at the same time I can't help but think that that is also like it's to help, what's the term, solidify and to make those rules much more important when there is a ritual involved to it, if that makes any sense.
No, I'm a big believer in that. I just don't think that you just could kind of take it out willy nilly. I think that's where the 1960s went wrong. I think because Leary, obviously there was a sense of bitterness because he was an established academia.
Yeah.
And basically when Harvard found out that you made the students test subjects, like you basically experimented on yourself, he lost basically
all his credibility.
And the thing, that's why that's why Harvard let him go. That's why it's just like, oh, okay, out goes your tenureship kind of thing, right? And then to me, there's an inherent sense of bitterness there. Or of course, I would be if that happened to me because I'm trying to do good by humanity.
Yeah.
But to me, where they went wrong was when he said in the 60s, like, tune in. Turn off, drop out.
Sorry, yeah, you're
some in that sense is like no. Maybe that's good, but don't drop out, because he was saying like, yeah, forget these institutions, don't vote, that kind of stuff. It's just like, what? Like no, like the idea is integration, like that. Getting high isn't the point of it. It's not transcendence really that you're looking for, or like you want to be like. Shiva or Buddha, like, you know what I mean, like where you like ascend to, like, no. It's integrating here, because remember, you're still mortal,
right?
You remember that you're still a human being, like until you die, until the point of death. Then when you become something else, that's fine. But you remember that you still have to live on, right? And that's the problem. Is I think the whole generation of 60s was sold this false bill of goods, in a sense that they thought like that was it. They thought that it was, oh, I take LSD and, I have this wonderful experience. But there was no way, there's no wisdom tradition on how to integrate that with the current world that they live in, which was a very tumultuous time.
Yeah.
Because there was basically an assassination, there was 8 major assassinations within the span of like 4 years, like both Kennedys died. Yeah. Martin Luther,
on top of the Cold War going on,
and on top of the war, and Vietnam, and then you had a guy as crazy as Nixon, where he would be like, oh yeah, war on drugs, you're gonna go to jail for possessing like a pound of marijuana kind of thing.
If I want to put this into cliches, it's almost like we're still in this this constant battle of like order, that classic idea, order and chaos. But in this case, though, it's like there's that human element where at the time when the drugs came in, it was a movement towards more I guess chaos, you'd say, but it's too much of it. It was irresponsible. It was just like it's not an attempt to sort of embrace the parts that we can't control, but more just like, who gives a crap? Let's throw it all away,
And to me, it's really a bad idea. Yeah. To me, and it screams of, this is just my personal opinion, right? It was a tune in, turn on, drop out.
Yeah.
My personal viewpoint is it screams of the trickster, because the thing is, this is just my personal belief, right? To me, I think that LSD is relatively new, like in a sense that what I mean by that isn't just because it's newly synthesized within like the last century. It's the fact that Silo, ayahuasca, we have thousands of years of experience, and if you go by the beliefs of Carl Jung and that kind of extraction, he believed that when you go to these altered states, you're partaking into the different experiences of every single person that's been in that altered state.
Right.
Well, how many people took LSD before LSD was synthesized by Albert Hoffman and his buddies? No one. As far as we can tell, that first LSD trip was Albert Hoffman taking that long bike ride home, and thought he was going insane, right? Yes, like there was LSD in the sense of the old ergot.
Yeah.
Meaning probably in the old occult rituals back in Europe, or there were witches, the witchcraft, yeah. Sure, but it's not the LSD that we know. That's why the thing is, to me, like every time I take it, it doesn't have as impactful as me taking a heroic dose of psilocybin mushrooms or taking ayahuasca, because the thing is, to me, it feels like a room that's empty. Meaning, like when I'm in there, like sure it gives me revelations or whatnot, but it doesn't really give me visuals either. Like it gives me like, oh, okay, these are what I need to implement in my life, but it doesn't have kind of like that helpful. When you take ayahuasca, it feels like you're almost going to school. Like okay, this is an implementation plan that we could do. You could choose to do it or not. It's up to you. Like but don't coming back to me like a few years from now and say like this. I told you so. You know what I mean? You don't have to follow it though, because you have free will kind of thing, right? LSD doesn't feel like that. It just feels like I'm there. I have all these insights, psychological insights of my deficiencies or whatnot. But then that's it. Like
in that case, if I may, it sounds like then ayahuasca and even psilocybin have its benefits in that there can be established lessons to learn from it. But LSD, because it's hypothetically a new drug, and once again, if we're going to go to that Carl Jung idea where it's being drawn from a location, or the information is being drawn from the location, there's no information to draw from then, right? So
to me, yeah, because it's relatively new. Like that, because meaning I might be one of the few that have this experience. I know some have a different experience and consider LSD some kind of ambrosia. I'm not one of those. And to me, it screams of the trickster, like what happened in the 60s. Because that seems like something that the trickster would do. Something like the trickster entity would be like a jokester, like hopping about, and you got the Harlequin mask and be like, fuck everything, like, you know what I mean? Everything sucks. Let's blow everything up, like,
Yeah, if it's like the Joker from the Dark Knight.
and it's like, no, like, there's a lot of good things about this society. You need to tune in. You need to turn on. You don't need to drop out. Like, you need to integrate the lessons that you learn in that psychedelic realm and whatever transcendent, space you were, and implement that in this human material reality, right?
It brings if I may ask this question, though, it does bring about this idea, and I know this isn't your theory, you're just kind of forming it in a way that, as a way to sort of understand this idea of LSD and how it works in conjunction to other psychedelics, but I'm kind of curious now, because if hypothetically ayahuasca is drawing in information and there are lessons in it, how are lessons created in the first place? So will LSD be ever at a point where you can draw information from it? Because if it's part of a pool or collected memory of people hallucinating and everyone's tapping into that same memory, then how are things added to it? And can things eventually be added to it that it can eventually become a positive force?
I mean, I have a very different experience, because guys that would be like Stanislav Grof that, had like 50 years of working with, the medicine kind of thing, and people that had a very positive experience in the 60s would say something opposite of what I'm saying. They would see it as like a wonder drug, kind of like the Orange Sunshine people. That's the reason why they didn't care if they went to jail, because they were like, oh, we're doing something that's a net benefit for society, like, kind of stuff. And that we want this to be given to everyone. I disagree with them. I think that because the thing is, the tryptamine class of drugs are all very similar molecularly, right? There maybe like one or two amino chains off, like
Right.
And like in the case of psilocybin, it's 2 enzymatic steps away from tryptophan. I mean, it looks identical if I draw it in.
Right, in the classic chemical formula thing.
Right. It looks like the same. It's just basically one chain off, like right here, right? But the thing is, I think that those minute changes are like, that's a wide gulf, Psilocybin essentially is edible DMT.
Yeah.
Meaning like you don't have to do anything to it chemically, because it bypasses like, the monoamine oxidase kind of thing, and it goes penetrates the blood-brain barrier, by eating it, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about, I got that acid in my stomach. You don't need to do like what you do with the ayahuasca, where it's 2 different plants that you combine together. With LSD, basically, it could go through your skin. So if you touch it, it's just kind of like mercury. It's just like, oh crap, like I have it on me, or like you want it quicker, like you put it in your tongue, right? Put the tab, right? The reason why to me it wasn't as cool, and the reason why I belong to that side. Just listen to what Terrence and Dennis said. The reason why they went to South America, to La Chorrera, is because they felt LSD wasn't breakthrough enough. It didn't affect their visual motor cortex, that part of their brain, because they didn't get any visuals from it.
So it sounds like they were just looking for something stronger.
Essentially, because they wanted to, from all the different Western traditions that they read, they wanted to take a psychedelic that replicated that, like the whole, like, there's an LSD. Human literature is so much filled with that, like from writings of the Buddha, writings of Ram Dass, like all these things. Pick your wisdom or pick your poison, or Alan Watts. Basically they wanted to go that next step over. And to me, for my biochemistry anyway, LSD is not the one for me. It's just not. For me, I think there's something that's inherently not wrong, but deficient in the idea here in the West of always trying to, because we get this tradition from the tradition of brewing beer. The whole
we distill it.
To make it as strong as a batch as possible, which you say is like, whoa, what, you're a hypocrite, because ayahuasca is kind of like that, where you keep on boiling the water for 12 to 48 hours until it becomes like this thick syrupy kind of goo kind of thing. And I was just like, yeah, but brewing alcohol is different. You're talking about like when you look at moonshine, for example, where it's like 90% proof, or like we have that tradition, right?
Right.
Where we forget where that came from. We use alcohol as a base essentially to make psilocybin juice. Essentially,
are you talking about the mentality, or literally we actually use the base?
Yes. Basically, when we look at it historically, when we do like carbon datings, and when we look at the reason why we most likely did ale, like as in beer, is because we were using that as a base to basically distill our version of soma, which in the Indian terms is like it's a thing of life, elixir of God, right. The kind of like the soup of life kind of thing, right? Basically, what happened is, in a lot of different parts of the world, climate change is a constant thing. It's not just like relegated to now. We've had climate change throughout the Paleocene, this epoch, right? And in some parts of the world that were former lush forests like Egypt, now it's desert. Right, 10,000 years ago, it was basically like being in the Amazon.
Yeah.
Right, and we had a long tradition historically of human beings consuming psilocybin mushrooms. Particularly, forget the whole Stone Ape theory, but even our religious practices, it was implemented. That's why in Europe they had that whole the B-man. Have you seen that petroglyph?
No, I haven't.
Where it's like it's in Central Europe. Where it's basically like this like Therioanthrope entity, and it has like toadstool mushrooms popping out on like different. I got to show it.
Yeah, that's so weird. Incidentally, you're gonna have to like see. We could have to see if we can find a picture and just. Like,
I know it. Yeah. We'll post it. We'll post it in the video.
Yeah.
And the thing is, what ended up happening is the climate change happened, so these things the mushrooms stopped growing. So a lot of people were like, well, shit, like we ran out of our holy stuff, and then basically they just kept on consuming alcohol. Because the thing is, like, for thousands of years they had this tradition, right? And then all of a sudden, like, the holy
ingredient is gone.
Yeah, when the ingredient is gone, they're like, oh no, like, and then this tradition has been so ingrained that they kept on drinking anyway. But the thing is, the actual transcendent part of the sacrament went away. So what we were left with was alcohol.
That's I never knew that. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of curious about two things now. Specifically, this is obviously of less precedence, but it's like how we're talking about we're running out of chocolate. So hypothetically, we're gonna have chocolate without chocolate. So it seems like we're going to this like phase now where we're running out of the ingredients to make certain things, but we still kind of consume them anyways, just because we've always been doing it.
Yeah. So that's what happened.
On the flip side, in my opinion, how are these current sciences now going to impact the nature that we consume ayahuasca? Because even in like the Terence McKenna's talk, he's talking about extracting certain parts of it, and it's like once again we're doing that thing that you were talking about. We're distilling ayahuasca to its core ingredients, and we can find out what particular enzymes are important. Like now apparently harmine is the big thing. This was a big enzyme that was all the talk through like a lot of the lectures that we went to. Harmine is apparently good for neurogenesis, but at the same time it has anti-cancer properties, so they're saying. So do you think that in this sense, this is a negative thing then, hypothetically? Because this is exactly what we're doing. We're super distilling.
I don't think it's a negative per se. I think it is lacking, though, because it's lacking that framework, that old alchemical framework of incorporating fire, earth, wind, and water. Meaning, like, don't try to keep science and mysticism kind of separate kind of thing. And that's the thing that's what's going to happen. When it's just the harming, you take it and you no longer have that visionary experience, because basically there goes the DMT, right? So the thing is, you're only treating, maybe what ends up happening is that only treats the symptom, or because it has a lot of different benefits like the beta carbolines and all that, the harmine, and known to help out with chronic diseases like diabetes, type 2, that kind of thing. But what is missing is that component of the transcendent thing, where it's just like, well, you know what? You know the reason why you have this disease is because you overeat. And the reason why you overeat is because this happened when you were a kid, and you're using that to basically self-medicate from your trauma. But that's gone now.
Yeah, but see, that's kind of the problem we're kind of getting into, right? Because, I mean, once again, what they're doing is wonderful. But, and I think actually there was a talk, like, specific about the idea that we might have to consider at least integrating some of the practices that come with it, because, you know, as wonderful as it is to break it down to their component parts, as you're saying, isn't that the ceremony and drinking the ayahuasca and the shamanistic counseling kind of the point of it all?
Because really in the church the Shona tribe, the basically I belong to, I'm not a native Shona tribe member. I'm just saying the ayahuasca church that I belong to, that's the tribe that it is.
Yeah.
They're among the first tribes in the Amazon to partake ayahuasca. They've been doing it for thousands of years. That's really as important as the actual ceremony, where they sit down and talk to you for like 2 hours. They're like, like, what happened last night?
There's a conversation, or an important conversation that happens.
And there's a follow-up too, because like when you meet up with the elders again, they're like, oh, okay, so what have you been up to? Like, kind of thing. And then they're like, and it's like, did you implement the lessons that the lady taught you? That kind of stuff. And you're like, it's just like, maybe it's time for you to drink some other time. Like, you know, kind of that kind of mentality.
Yeah.
Where the integration is just as important as the actual psychedelic experience.
Yeah. But it seems like what you know, with these studies, they're trying to break it down to its component pieces, and inevitably it's going to be lost, right? Because, you know, you can't create a ceremony out of just getting an injection of harmine.
No, it's just to be like, what's happening? Nothing.
Well, maybe we could. I mean, maybe, and I guess hypothetically, like good doctor, bedside manner, you know, you're supposed to, you know, give them the treatment and then interact with the patient. Just to generally let them know that they're important, because that's beneficial medically, and B, because it's just a normal thing we do. It's like, oh yeah, is it working? Are you okay? How are things going? That's part of it.
Because I think that is the consequence that we paid by separating the alchemical mysticism away from like the hard science. Is what ended up happening essentially in the West is we thought in ideas of like the philosopher's stone, where it's like the panacea, the magic pill that fixes everything. Like, you know, it's mechanistic. That's the price of thinking of the world as a mechanistic place. Because the thing is just like, well, you know, the gear is wrong. Just replace the gear and it's going to be okay. No, maybe there's something wrong with the clockmaker. Yeah. Okay,
and I guess maybe that's the core point of what we're getting at, right? Like, are we getting way too mechanistic about it? You think so? You think so? So
I think so.
But like isn't that the purpose of this entire? That's the purpose of the entire conference, though, isn't it? It's like it's supposed to be about that mechanistic side of it. They're trying to really play up that angle.
They are. Well, the thing is, I find it healthy that yes, the main conferences were like, the main presentations. Yeah. Meaning like the PowerPoint presentations were like that, but there was room to breathe because there were several parts where they would have yoga, like, you know, and it was really late at night, like ended at like 12 or 1 o'clock.
It was like cannabis yoga or something.
Yeah, it's like it was great. And then they had, and of course, cannabis legal in California, right? And then suck it, states. Yeah, losers. And then you know, so people taking edibles and, you know, that kind of thing. And then they were out in the marketplace, and there was like psychedelic art there. And then there's a symposia stage, which is a little bit more eccentric presenters. Maybe they wouldn't have PhDs. Some of them have like MAs, or they would just talk experientially with or plug in their book kind of thing. There was a room to breathe. It wasn't just like 100%, you know, like, oh, left brain, right brain. Like, there's no such thing. It's the same brain, like, you know?
I see. And ultimately, I guess it's what you're trying to say is that from the overall conference, they weren't trying to convey it. They were trying to convey it in that mechanistic aspect, but at the same time, there's still an overall feeling where it's like, oh yeah, you know, there's still some of that mystical aspect that was part of the conference, and there was
for sure. The thing that I really liked about it was the fact that there were a couple people there, and I would call it like it was a healthy crowd, where basically I would say 60-70% of the people were scientists, right? It didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
Or health professionals like nurses, psychiatrists, you know, that kind of thing. And then there was like the rest of the 30%, or it might be like 10% burners. Because man, we got like a couple of Burning Man people, and they're dressed up in like the pilot outfits, like when they're partying, and I'm like, that's a Burning Man costume, like, you know. So there were like burners. There was a couple of holdouts from like the '60s.
Yeah.
Obviously, they were hippies.
Yeah,
you know,
they were very easy to tell apart.
Yes, they were pretty easy to tell apart. And then basically the rest of that 10% were just like regular people that were interested in knowing more about psychedelics. You know,
that's me. I think that's. That was
well, I mean, like they're very professional. They're wearing polos. It's like, why are you here?
I was not professional, but yeah.
And then
yeah, like at least it seemed like they were from the entrepreneurial side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were like they had a business, right?
Yeah.
Basically we came. There was 4 of us. So 3 of them belonged to the Siona tribe church that I belong to. So one of the girls there I never met until the conference, because every time like we would have a ceremony, she wouldn't be there, but they were always talking about her. It's like, who is this Andrea girl? Like, you know. And then so met her there. And then I came with my friend Senya, she's interviews like A-listers in Hollywood, and she's also a member of Pussy Riot. So screw you, Putin. You know, I know you're putting tabs on us already. And then and then there were the 2 of us, because I know there's gonna be a fucking bot searching this this video.
Fair enough.
You know what I mean? Because that guy's petty as fuck. But yeah, like, you know, so it was a healthy mix. It wasn't just like a certain, but there was that kind of Burning Man ridiculous aspect, because I saw a couple people who were like, when we went down to see the party, I didn't stay so much downstairs because you guys ended up sleeping. It was late. It was like, you know, midnight already, but I stayed in like, there was like a top floor where you could see most of San Francisco, the Bay Area.
That must have been wonderful, and to a degree, I should have joined you, but I'm an old man. I can't stay anyway.
Yeah. So that's when I partook in the tea, and I had like a wonderful conversation. It was a very valuable lesson that I had, which is probably the most whimsical ayahuasca experience I've ever had, ever. Which was right before I take it, I already have kind of visions, because it's almost my body's anticipating. It's a psychosomatic almost, right? And so when I close my eyes, like, oh crap, like sacred geometry is about to begin, right?
Or at the very least, maybe your body at this point, it's like chemically prepped. So once it like recognizes the chemicals, it just goes. Yeah,
goes immediately, right? So what I did is I didn't do it. I partook it by myself. I had my own circle kind of thing. There was but instead of, what happened was I drank it, and for some reason people approached me and I had wonderful conversations with them. And it lasted until like 2:30 a.m. in the morning. And then, so I was just like, wow, like, you know, I didn't lay down and like experience like the medicine. And then when I got back to sleep in our room, I laid down, and basically like it was over. It was funny because it only had one vision. It basically had like a weird like geometric curtain that came down. Like it's like a weird fractal geometrical pattern of like a curtain.
Yeah.
Some kind of hyperspace curtain, right? It like being in a stage. And it was like in like French letters or whatever, some kind of like weird like Egyptian hieroglyph, like weird Japanese with Mayan. I think it said El Fin, you know, because you knew it, right? And it was basically, it was like psych, like, you know what I mean? It was just like later, like, you know, and then it ended, and I was just like, what? Am I just supposed to sleep now? And I put 2 and 2 together. I finally understood in the morning, which was, you don't need to always be blasted in hyperspace in order to get a net benefit in something. It could just be like, that's a conversation topic opener, you know, for like-minded people.
And you know what? It's funny because it brings back what you were talking about, like what not Terrence McKenna, Leary was talking about. You know, tune in, turn on, but your addition to it or your correction of that statement, don't drop out. It's almost like, you know, you took this hallucinogenic drug, but ultimately the one of the biggest benefits that you gained from it was just speaking with other people. It's like that conjunction of you know, being a part of a group or a society, or talking with people or interacting with people. That was what's the
funniest thing, because I actually saw the green lady in that vision that night, and it was just almost like, she was like, what, did you expect more? Bye. And then like, it's just like she left, and it was almost like when Chappelle did like a comedy skit and he was like, psych, like, you know, it was almost kind of like that, where I was like, oh, like, you know, I felt kind of bummed out, like
at first, right?
At first, yeah, because I was like, what? Like, you know, I don't have any more. Like, you know, I can't. Oh, like, you know what I mean? Like, and then I woke up in the morning. It just occurred to me. It's like, wow, like I had like one of the most wonderful conversations I had in years. Like, and I exchanged like numbers with like 4 different people. They all gave me their business cards, kind of thing, and we're all like-minded, and we all spoke the same vocabulary. They're all psychonauts, kind of thing. And I was like, wow. And then I got a hold of one of them, like,
Okay.
right after the conference, he emailed me.
Oh, yeah, excellent.
And then I was just like, huh, like, it's just kind of weird. And it occurred to me, it was just like, wow, it's not just, what's important really isn't that other place. What's important is here, because you're still a human being. You're not God. You have to implement the lessons that you learned there here, because you're still living, know? So I was like, until you're dead, like, well, sorry, you still got to live.
Once again, as you were saying, the integration.
The integration part. And so I was like, huh, that's funny. But it was really the most, even though it only lasted basically like 7 seconds or whatever, it was the most whimsical ayahuasca experience I've ever had, because I thought I was going to have visions the whole night, because right before I took it, I was already seeing it. And I was just like, no, I'm going to go by myself. And then I drank. And all of a sudden, like, it's weird, because one person came by, talked to him for like an hour. He had to go. 2 other people, three came by, and I talked to them, and then we spoke until about 2:30 in the morning.
And
it was pretty nice. It was pretty nice. And then I was like, huh. And then so I was like, oh crap! Like, I'm already feeling the effects. I could barely walk back to the room, like, because I was like, this isn't good. Because so I was seeing the point. It's kind of like the pointillist. You can, if you take a heroic dose sometimes in ayahuasca, you basically the vision will manifest without you having to close your eyes.
Okay, wow.
Meaning like, even your eyes are open, you can still see something, right?
Yeah.
It's like a real time hallucination, like, kind of like oh wow, there's an elephant in the room.
It's that classic example of when they show in media when someone's like tripping out. They're still awake, but then they're just seeing weird and random.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was beginning to happen, and then so I was like, wow, I need to get back to my room, and then I went back to the room, and then I put the cover in my head. Not a blanket, but my jacket. Remember my jacket, right?
Yeah.
And then that was it. It was just like this is kind of like a drape cascade of a theater, but it was like in hyper dimensions, and it was like rainbow colored, right? And then it closed. The curtain closed, and then I knew right away what that word was. It was like El Fin, like the end. And then she was like, and then she just left. I'm like, damn it! And I understood. I understood in the morning what it was. It's just like, look, you don't have to always be here. You need to like interact with people, because you're a human being. You're not like one of us.
I wonder if that is the grand lesson too of all things. It's just, as you were saying, in the end, we can learn some wonderful things, and it's necessary once in a while to go into the other realm, to change the way that we think, to see things, or at the very least take a different look at something that we normally see, so that we can come back into society and hopefully be good people.
Oh, what's funny? Funny? Maybe I don't know if we should end it here, but the funniest thing was I didn't want to go back to the car and drop off my thermos, which had the medicine. So I was just carrying it with me the whole kind of first few hours in the morning, right?
Yeah.
I was just like so happy, kind of thing. I got to speak for Kathleen Harrison, Terrence's ex-wife. For people that, I just know her as like this famous, world famous ethnobotanist, but most people know her as that or whatever.
Yeah.
I bumped into her, and she asked like, how's my day doing? And I told her what happened in the previous evening, right? And she asked me like, I was like, yeah, I found out really something very important last night. And I told her about the story, and she just laughed. And then we went our separate ways. I thought that was really quaint, and it was like a perfect way to end the day for me. I wish we said goodbye to her before we left, because she was still in her botanical dimensions booth, kind of plugging away. But I felt that was like a perfect way to end the Sunday.
Maybe it's a good way, like the that gentle, what I'm presuming is a gentle laugh, and then like you guys.
Oh yeah, because she just kind of nodded her head, and she like understood, like It was so awesome that like I had my thermos, and then like I bumped into her, and she's like, "What's that?" And I was like, "Oh, I carried the medicine with me." I was like, "You took it here?" I'm like, "What would be the point, like, of taking it during the actual conference itself?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You take it after the conference, like And so she's like, "Yeah, exactly. That's good. That's good that you see the world that way." And I told her I did take it last night, but then this happened, and then I realized you don't always need to be in the Millennium Falcon to enjoy it, right? And she's like, "Ah." And like she understood, like she just gave me that look. Like she understood, like, oh, you've had one of those. Good job, kid. Like good job. And then we went. It was really cool. It was a great way to end the actual conference. And then obviously we had that great Nepalese food after that.
Oh yes, that place was wonderful. So I forgot what you ended up having. It was chicken infused or something, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I guess before we close off, let's quickly talk about the
Oh.
light thing because
Oh shit!
I guess
light thing.
yeah, Julius is more adventurous than I am. He does take he has tried out DMT and LSD. I haven't tried anything like that, so this is arguably the closest I've gotten to actually having a trip. So, but please, you were the one who did it first, so talk about your experience.
Well, it was obvious that they were using binaural beats for the sound, and
Yeah.
basically they were using what I would say like would be the Monroe Protocol,
See-
with HemiSync.
Hypothetically, though, that apparently it doesn't matter. Apparently they can actually use any soundtrack because they're asking if other people if they had like soundtrack or songs that they wanted to insert, they could use anything.
Oh, they could use anything.
Yeah,
Awesome.
so that's-
But then it's the light then.
It's specifically the light.
Well,
Yeah.
that light to me kind of replicated, even though 5-MeO doesn't have any visuals. It really feels more like 5-MeO DMT than regular DMT. Meaning, you feel like you're more in that transcendent, like heavenly, holy place. Because right when I was having it, I was like, yeah, because they tell you to like keep a thumbs up if you want it to grow more intense.
Right. Yeah.
And then within like 5 minutes, like I was laughing. And then like I was like, yeah. And for some reason, I knew that it was 10 minutes were over. Like I just knew. Like I was just kind of like rose up. And she's like, how do you know 10 minutes was over? I'm like, I don't know. Like I just know. You said 10 minutes, right? I wasn't timing myself.
you just happen to know.
You just happen to know.
Yeah.
We will post a video because I did have like the funniest video ever the reason before I came and used the machine, there were two older adults that were using it, and we did kind of like point and click interview of them, and I will link that because you know the release is okayed, and we will post it like linked with this video of ours because it's so funny, and that's how I decided. Oh wow, they had a good experience. Let me try it out too. It feels like a 5-MeO experience, even though I did see something.
Yeah.
I kind of saw mandalas and kind of like daisy patterns. It was more reminiscent. The visual is a little bit more reminiscent, I suppose, of the LSD space, as opposed to. But the transcendent portion feels like more like for me 5-MeO. But everyone that I asked concerning about it, they all have different experiences.
Yeah.
So tell us about yours.
First things first, I have to say that I was kind of the asshole in this situation because I was grilling the ladies running the booth. I was asking all sorts of questions. I don't remember the details, but I mean I wasn't trying to be a jerk for the sake of being a jerk. I was just trying to get as much information as possible. But in the back of my head, I still was a little skeptical. I didn't think it'd work. I thought I'd just at the very least see a bunch of like colors and it's like okay yeah whatever. So I sit into the chair, and it was just that. It was just like a few lights, and I didn't think it was anything special. And then what I ended up seeing was it looked like a corridor, and it was a corridor, but it had like a sort of bubble pattern or printing on the side of it. So it was in black and white, but with shades of gray in between. So I was going through this corridor of bubbles, and I guess if I were to give you a visualization, it looks similar to the pattern that you see on those old like Mead those Mead folders. Yeah, it looked like that. I was traveling through that for a period of time, and then all of a sudden it just stopped, and maybe the music has something to do with it, but it stopped for a moment, and then I started seeing the I guess like as you were saying the mandala patterns or the patterns that you see on a Native American quilt.
Right.
And I was seeing that for a while, and then they stopped the music. So as you was saying before, when they stop the music, you have an opportunity to increase the intensity. And once I increased the intensity, I was feeling I was seeing much more of those patterns, but it was always coming at me from like it was like I was once again in a corridor in a wall, but I was seeing the patterns from the side. And yeah, and on that note too, I also felt the heat of the lamp.
Right. That's the one thing I didn't like about it.
Yeah, I was wondering if that had an impact on what I was seeing. But I have to say though, yeah, after that, the music stopped again, so I gave them the thumbs up, thinking that they increased the intensity, and they're saying no, stop, man, you're finished.
You're finished.
Yeah, you're done.
It's to me when I say that it's more 5-MeO, it has a sense of euphoria for me. That sense of euphoria. That's the one thing I didn't enjoy about it is the heat. I don't know if there's a way, because remember, anything like that would generate heat. Light.
Right. I think right now we're starting to glimmer just a little bit. So.
Yeah. So it's the same thing with that. Is it's going to generate some kind of thermal energy.
Yeah.
But the thing that I told Antas, you know what? This would be a perfect installation if they combine this with the sense deprivation chamber. Meaning, like you go to sense deprivation chamber, this activates for like 15 to 20 minutes or whatever, like maybe like a pop up screen. like right by your head.
Yeah.
And then when that's done, it collapses back, so you're back to like the no sense thing. I wonder what this would do.
Yeah.
This would be like, yeah, maybe this will make some psychedelics obsolete kind of thing.
Or on the flip side, it might not do anything because I mean, isn't hypothetically the point of the sensory deprivation chamber to not see any sensation?
Right.
So would it mess everything up? Maybe
It might. Yeah. We don't know. But that girl's gonna be in Malibu in like a few days, or I believe, or later this month, and I'd want to try it out when they go down to LA.
Malibu, California. I was just saying Malibu, Florida. It's like,
No.
But yeah, I have to say, I mean, I wasn't expecting much, but at the same time, though, I definitely saw something, and it's just lights. It's not. They don't, as far as I know, it's not the. They were saying it wasn't the sound. They don't. It's a single light gradient. It's not like there's a pattern on the light itself.
No.
They don't flash different lights. It's a single white light that they just flash at a certain frequency.
Yeah.
That's all they do, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't have any much to say. I just wish that I was able to do it longer.
What we had was the. I'm guessing you did the 10-minute.
10-minute trial. Because they had the 10-minute and 16-minute one, right?
Yeah, and that cost a cool $60. And as cool as it was, I didn't have 60.
No, I know. And the thing is, the most interesting comment for me came with the people that were like so interested. They were like hovering over me. It was kind of like, dude, stop violating my personal space, man. They were like these big guys, like, you know, like 6'2", 6'3", and they were like looking at me intently. And I'm like, this was when the experience was over. And I was like, what the hell, man? Like, you know, and then so I did the push the light away. And they were like, dude, what's going on, man? You're having like rapid eye movement, like REM in there, like, you know, and they kind of had like the bro factor a little bit. I don't know, it was weird because the thing is, one of them said scientist, like, you know, he had like a tag, right?
What's wrong with that?
Yeah. Well, yeah. We can get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. They're like, what's up, man? Like, you know, like, what was going on? Like, what have you? I'm like, more 5-MeO, like euphoria kind of thing. And I was just like, yeah, it's definitely does something. Because I was like, why don't you do it? And then the bigger one was like all kind of backing off. Like, he was still like, oh no. Like, you know, like I was like, why? Like, you know, nothing's gonna happen. Like, you know what I mean? It was just so weird. Because like I was laying down one moment. And then the next moment, like, I'm like, who are these aliens? Like, you know, I mean, they're human beings. What I'm saying, I was like, why are they like this? Like, you know?
They're getting a little...
Like, I was like, dude, really? Yeah. Because they were like, why are you having REM, man? Like, why were you laughing in there? I don't know, because I was having a good time. Like, people are weird. You know?
On that note, though, I have to say it was... I wonder if we can construct that ourselves. I'm curious, because hypothetically the setup seems really simple, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want to muscle in on that lady's business.
And she was milking it. She was milking it. Like, all three, dude, they had that thing open for like 18 hours, man. Yeah, they made a whole grip of money. They had a whole grip of money, man. You know, because I was like, damn, now it's still going. Because remember, they partied until 6 in the marketplace.
Yeah.
They were doing that until 6 a.m. in the morning. I was like, god damn. And then some of the vendors, they slept in their freaking thing. They were like, kept on being in their booth, like, you know.
That's some dedication, but at the same time, though, yeah, like it seems like a good event to make a decent amount of money. So, like that stuff, I thought that booth was actually really neat. On a side note, too, apparently I have a nickname now because I was the only person that saw Bubbles, so Bubbles is my nickname. And I shouldn't be saying
we should end it there, Bubbles.
Yeah, you know, we'll just end it there. And I know I'm going to regret saying this because it's going to be posted on YouTube and that's going to be my name for the rest of my life. Vladimir Putin's going to be watching this. He's going to be like, you know, FJB, I like Bubbles. So
well, fuck it. We're just going to use the hate on, like, you know, like the Pussy Riot people. F them. Excelsior. You know? Got any last words?
Thank you so much for joining us, please. I hope you take care, and I hope that you find something wonderful in your life.